I yield to my friend from California, who has done such a wonderful job in organizing what is called the Skeptics Caucus in a time where skepticism is called through enlightened articulation of facts. He has come forward, as has my good friend and colleague from Ohio, Representative Marcy Kaptur, who has courageously stood here day in and day out, challenging this corrupt bailout. I yield to my friends, and I thank you for your service to America and for your service to your communities.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 18, 2007, the gentleman from California, Mr. Sherman, is recognized for the remainder of the time.
I thank the chair. I've got 30 minutes, and I'll share some with the gentlelady from Ohio in just a second to describe the flaws with this bill. Believe it or not, 30 minutes is not long enough. But first, I want to mention about the calls that are coming into our office. You know, the calls used to be from people around the country. Now Wall Street firms have their employees unplugging those headsets to call investors and instead calling members of Congress. And so now the calls coming into at least my office have shifted from 20-1 against this bailout package for Wall Street down to about 3 or 4-1 against this bailout. I ask my colleagues not to be confused. Yet, edit out some of those calls that are coming to you from folks who are being paid to make the call, and you'll realize the country remains absolutely overwhelmingly opposed to this Wall Street bailout bill. I thank again the gentleman from Ohio, and I will make a few more points. We had a meeting of the Skeptics Caucus, which is now a bipartisan Skeptics Caucus, where we heard from Bill Isaac. Mr. Isaac was chair of the FDIC, having first been appointed to that board by President Carter and then appointed by Reagan. You don't find very many people who have support on both sides of the aisle like that. And Bill Isaac led the FDIC in solving the 1981 crisis, which was probably worse than the crisis that we have now. He used the emergency powers of the FDIC. He was able to solve that credit crisis without significant cost to the taxpayer. We ought to hear from Bill Isaac. And I look forward to us defeating this bill tomorrow so that we can have hearings. And all my colleagues, not just those who came to the Skeptics Caucus, can hear from Mr. Isaac and so many others. Because the starting point is this testimony that we didn't hear before any hearing, because there have been no hearings on this bill, but rather a letter sent to members of Congress by hundreds of eminent economists, including 3 Nobel laureates. And they said, we ask Congress not to hold appropriate hearings and to carefully consider the right course of action. So, Nobel laureates, economists eminent in their field, say the sky will not fall if we take some time. The only way to pass this bill is to keep up the panic. The panic has to be calmed down. We've got a few days. We've got a week. We've got 10 days, and that's more than enough time to write a much better bill. But let me summarize some of the other things that Bill Isaac told our Skeptics Caucus. A vote no on tomorrow's bill is not a vote to do nothing. It's a vote to defeat that bill and to start writing a much better bill. Under the bill that comes before us tomorrow, in Mr. Isaac's belief, half of all the money is going to be used to bail out foreign investors who made dumb business decisions. Now, I'm not real sure that I want to use taxpayers' money to bail out American investors who made bad business decisions. But why are we bailing out the Bank of China? Why are we bailing out the Saudi royal family? We are doing so because they demand it. They communicate those demands at the highest level to our administration. And after I yield to the gentlelady from Ohio, I will describe how the bill clearly provides that we can send as much money as Treasury wants, not to bail out American investors, but to bail out foreign investors. And when I say foreign investors, I don't just mean the companies here in the United States that happen to have foreign owners. I have sought at the Rules Committee to simply put an amendment in this bill to say that we're not going to buy any toxic asset that wasn't demonstrably owned by an American on September 20th. That amendment will not be allowed. It was not allowed last time. It won't be allowed this time. Why? Because they think they can hide from this Congress and from the American people the fact that hundreds of billions of dollars are going to overseas investors. And there are transparency provisions in the bill on a lot of things. But the one thing that will never be revealed, when Goldman Sachs sells a bond on December 1st to Treasury, what will not be revealed is whether Goldman Sachs bought it from the Bank of China 2 or 3 days earlier with intention to sell to Treasury. We are going to be buying bonds that are currently in vaults in Beijing and London. What Mr. Isaac also pointed out is that this bill is not going to solve the problem. People think that if you act in a panic and you throw $700 billion at something, you're going to solve it. Hardly. In his estimation, the credit markets will not be appreciably working any better than they are today. They may loosen things up for a week or two, but you're looking at a December that's no better than it would be if we did not pass this bill. The FDIC could solve this problem under their existing powers. If they're a little shy to use those powers to the hilt, we can and should pass a bill that outlines that, yes, indeed, we do want them to use their powers. What should they do? They should provide, for a temporary time, a total guarantee on all of the general credit debt of banks. So the regulated commercial banks would be places where people know their money is safe. They're subject to regulation, and the main part of this crisis is that the banks are unwilling to lend to each other, as they traditionally do, because no one bank is sure that the other bank is safe. We've got to say the commercial banks of America are safe and tell investors around the world that's where they can put their money with total safety. Now, this leaves out some Wall Street entities that are desperate for that $700 billion. They can just taste it. But it allows us to solve this problem without appreciable cost to U.S. taxpayer. And the FDIC collects an insurance premium from the banks, so it would be the financial system, not the American taxpayer, paying the cost of taking care of this risk. Now, I would hope that every member of Congress has received my blue paper. I've sent it out today via email. I've handed it out on the floor, but I know there are a few that haven't received it. Please contact my office and read. Learn how this bill will send half the money to foreign investors. Learn how this bill bails out firms that will continue to pay $1 million a month salaries and could raise those executives to $1.5 million a month, should they choose to do so. Please read the paper, read about the key provisions of the bill, and then you'll be armed with the information necessary to deal with the fearmongers that tell you, well, you had to pass that bill. You had to dump $700 billion from a helicopter onto Wall Street because somehow that was going to take a terrible economy and turn it into a great economy. Such an action will indeed make things better for a few Wall Street executives. And they are very determined, and their employees on company time are calling our offices. The only way they can pass this bill is by creating and sustaining a panic atmosphere. That atmosphere is not justified. Many of us were told in private conversations that if we voted against this bill on Monday, that the sky would fall, the market would drop 2,000 or 3,000 points the first day, another couple thousand the second day, and a few members were even told that there would be martial law in America if we voted no.